My name is Alyssa Morgan. I'm 29 years old. And the strange thing about watching your relationship fall apart is that it doesn't always start with a fight. Sometimes it starts with a message, a normal day, a quiet moment where nothing feels wrong, until suddenly everything is. 14 months. That's how long Daniel and I had been together. Not forever, not even close, but long enough to build routines, long enough to recognize the rhythm of someone's breathing when they fall asleep next to you, long enough to believe, maybe, eventually, this could turn into something permanent. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party, one of those loud, crowded nights where conversations overlap and nobody remembers half the names they hear. But I remembered his, Daniel Brooks. He wasn't the loudest person in the room. Didn't need to be. He had this quiet confidence, the kind that made you lean in without realizing it. We started dating about 6 weeks later, and for a while, things were good. Not perfect, but real. We laughed easily. We communicated. At least I thought we did. We built something that felt steady. But there was one thing we hadn't built, a future. At least, not in the way he apparently had in his head. I want to be clear about something. I'm not against marriage. I want it someday. A partner. A home. Maybe kids. But I've always believed in time. In knowing someone. Not just loving them, but understanding who they are when things get hard. Understanding how they handle pressure, conflict, reality. 14 months? That's not enough for me. Not for a lifelong promise. Daniel's younger sister got engaged 3 months ago. It was big. The kind of proposal people post about. Perfect lighting, perfect ring, perfect reactions. And after that, something shifted. At first, it was subtle. Wow, they look so happy. I wonder when it'll be our turn. My mom keeps asking about you. Little comments, easy to brush off. And I did, because we hadn't even said I love you until month 10. Jumping from that to engagement, it didn't make sense. Then last Tuesday happened. I was at home, sitting on my couch, half watching something I wasn't really paying attention to, when my phone buzzed. A text from Daniel. I remember smiling before I opened it. That's the part that lingers. How normal it felt, right before it didn't. So I did something kind of crazy, he wrote. I told my parents we're engaged. I blinked. Read it again. Slower this time. They were so excited. Surprise. Now you have to propose for real. So it's official. Maybe this weekend? I already told my dad you're traditional and want to ask his permission first. You can call him tonight. I must have read that message 15 times, because my brain refused to accept it. We'd never talked about marriage, not seriously, not once. And yet, somehow, he had told his parents we were engaged. Not thinking about it, not heading there. Engaged. A ring that didn't exist. A proposal that never happened. A future that had never been agreed on. And his solution? That I should just make it real. I sat there for 2 hours, phone in my hand, heart doing that slow, heavy thing where it doesn't race, it sinks. Part of me wanted to call him immediately, demand an explanation. Another part of me wondered if this was a joke, a bad one. But deep down, I think I already knew. So I typed 3 words, congratulations on your news, and I hit send. A minute later, my phone lit up again. Emojis. Excited ones. OMG, I knew you'd be excited. Excited. He thought I was playing along. He thought, this worked. That telling his parents first would lock me in. That I would just follow through. That I would step into a life I never agreed to, because he had already announced it. And that's when something inside me shifted. Quietly. Permanently. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't miscommunication. This was manipulation. Carefully planned, deliberate. A decision made without me, but designed to control me. I opened Facebook. Found his mom's profile. We weren't friends, but her messages were open. I stared at the screen for a long time, because I knew, once I did this, there was no going back. Then I typed. Carefully, honestly. Hi, this is Alyssa. I'm not sure what Daniel told you, but I wanted to clarify something directly. We are not engaged. We've never discussed engagement, and he hasn't proposed. I'm sorry if this is confusing or upsetting, but I didn't want you to be misled. Given everything that's happened, I also think it's best for Daniel and me to go our separate ways. I wish you and your family well. I read it once, twice. Then I sent it, before I could stop myself. 40 minutes later, my phone exploded. The first message came through so fast it almost felt like she'd been waiting for it. Daniel, why is my mom calling me crying? What did you do? Then another. Did you seriously tell her we're not engaged? You were supposed to go along with it. And then the one that said everything I needed to know. I can't believe you would humiliate me like this. I stared at the screen, my chest tight. Not from panic, but from something colder. Clarity. Because even now, even after everything, he didn't understand what he'd done. I didn't call. Instead, I typed, "You humiliated yourself when you lied to your parents." I told them the truth. 3 dots appeared instantly, then disappeared, then came back. This was supposed to be romantic. I actually let out a small, disbelieving laugh. Romantic. That word landed like something rotten. "There's nothing romantic about trying to force someone into proposing," I replied. "I wasn't forcing you," he shot back. "I was giving you a push. You were taking too long." My jaw tightened. 14 months is not too long. And even if it was, the solution is a conversation, not lying to your entire family. You're overreacting. There it was. That shift. From apology to dismissal. "Just call my mom," he continued. "Tell her it was a misunderstanding. Say you were planning to propose but wanted the right moment. We can fix this." Fix this. Like it was a scheduling issue, a minor miscommunication. Like I hadn't just been shoved into a life decision I never agreed to. I stared at that message for a long time. Then I typed one word. Number. The reply came instantly. "What do you mean no?" "I mean no." I wrote, "I'm not lying to cover up your lie, and I'm not proposing to someone who thinks this is acceptable." There was a pause. Longer this time. Then, "So you're just throwing everything away over one mistake?" I exhaled slowly. Because this wasn't one mistake. This was a pattern I hadn't seen clearly. Until now. "We're done, Daniel." He called me 16 times that night. I didn't answer once. By morning, there were 28 messages waiting for me. Some angry, some desperate, some almost convincing. The last one read, "Fine. If you want to ruin this over nothing, that's on you. But don't come crawling back when you realize what you lost." I didn't respond. And for the first time since that message, I put my phone face down and sat in silence. 14 months. It wasn't nothing. There were good memories, real ones. Moments where I had looked at him and thought, maybe this could be it. And now, it was gone. Not because we fought. Not because we drifted apart. But because he decided his timeline mattered more than my consent. For a few days, things were quiet. I went to work, came home, let the reality settle in, piece by piece. My friends told me I did the right thing. My family agreed. And slowly, I started to believe them. Started to feel like maybe, just maybe, I was going to be okay. Then Thursday happened. I didn't recognize the number. That's the only reason I answered. "Hello?" A man's voice. Calm, controlled. "This is Daniel's father." My spine straightened instinctively. "I see," I said carefully. "We need to talk." I already knew this wasn't going to be a conversation. It was going to be a correction. An attempt to reshape the narrative. Still, I kept my voice even. "I'm not sure there's much to talk about, sir." There was a pause. Then, "You embarrassed my son in front of our entire family." There it was. Not concern, not curiosity. Accusation. "With respect," I said, "he embarrassed himself. I told the truth." "He made a mistake," his father replied sharply. "He got excited. That's not a reason to end a relationship." I closed my eyes briefly, trying to stay calm. "He told you we were engaged," I said. "We've never even discussed marriage. That's not excitement. That's fabrication." Another pause. Tighter this time. "You could have handled it privately," he said, instead of messaging his mother. I let out a slow breath. "I could have," I admitted. "But then you would still believe we were engaged, and I would be stuck correcting that lie later, after it had grown even bigger." "So you'd rather destroy my son's reputation than have an uncomfortable conversation?" The words hit harder than I expected. Not because they were true, but because they were so certain. "I'd rather not be manipulated into a life decision," I said quietly, "by someone who doesn't respect me enough to ask first." The line went silent. Then, click. He hung up. I stared at my phone for a long moment, then set it down, because somehow this wasn't surprising. The next day I got a message from his sister, the one who had gotten engaged 3 months ago, the one who had unknowingly lit the fuse for all of this. "Hey, I know things are complicated right now," she wrote, "but I think you're being really unfair to Daniel." I read it twice before responding. "He told your parents we were engaged. That's not unfair. That's reality." Her reply came quickly. "He loves you. He just wanted to move things forward." I felt something inside me tighten. "People who love each other talk," I wrote. "They don't fabricate engagements." "You're being really cold," she replied. "I don't recognize you." That one lingered. Because maybe she was right. Maybe I was colder now. But maybe that wasn't a bad thing. 2 days later, there was a knock on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so when I opened it, I froze. Daniel, standing there, looking smaller than I remembered. Not physically, but something in his posture, his expression. The confidence he used to carry so easily was gone. "We need to talk," he said. I almost closed the door. I don't think we do. Please, he said quickly, just 10 minutes. I hesitated, and that hesitation was my mistake, because 10 minutes turned into something much harder. He sat on my couch, the same couch where we'd spent lazy Sundays, where he'd fallen asleep with his head in my lap. Now he sat there, rigid, hands clasped. I know I messed up, he said. His voice was softer than I'd ever heard it. I shouldn't have told my parents without talking to you first. I leaned against the wall, arms crossed. That's an understatement. I panicked, he continued. My sister got engaged and everyone kept asking about us and So you lied, I cut in. I didn't think of it like that, he said quickly. I thought if I just got things started, you'd catch up. You'd see how happy everyone was and you'd want it too. I stared at him. Because that sentence, that logic, was the problem. That's not how relationships work, I said. I know, he said. I know that now. Silence stretched between us. Heavy, then quietly. Can we just start over, he asked? Pretend this didn't happen? And for a second, just a second, I imagined it. Going back, undoing the damage, holding on to the version of him I thought I knew. But then I remembered the message. Now you have to propose for real. Not a request, a demand, a trap. No, I said. His face fell. Why? Because I can't trust you. The words came out steady. You made a life decision for both of us without even asking me, and then you expected me to just go along with it. I said I was sorry. You're sorry you got caught, I interrupted. That's not true. You texted me and told me I had to propose. Those were your words. He opened his mouth, then closed it, because there was no way to explain that. No way to make it sound better. I think you should go, I said quietly. He didn't move at first. Then his eyes filled. And just like that, the man who had tried to control everything was suddenly begging. He apologized again. Promised therapy, promised change, promised anything. And the worst part? I believed him. I believed he felt bad. I believed he regretted it. I just didn't believe he would change. Because this wasn't just a mistake. It was a mindset, a belief that his wants could override my choice. And that kind of belief doesn't disappear overnight. He left in tears. I closed the door behind him, rested my forehead against it, and let myself feel it. All of it. The loss, the anger, the quiet, aching disappointment of realizing the person you thought you knew never really existed. But underneath all of that, there was something else, something steady, something certain. This was over, and it needed to be. I just didn't know yet that it was about to get so much worse. I thought after Daniel left my apartment, things would finally settle down. That maybe the worst part was over. That we had reached the ugly, painful ending. And now all that was left was distance. Silence. Time. I should have known better. Because some people don't know how to lose quietly. And some families don't know how to let the truth exist if it makes them look bad. It started with mutual friends. Not all at once. One text here, one awkward message there. The first came from a woman named Claire, someone I'd met through Daniel early in our relationship. We weren't best friends, but we'd had dinner together enough times that her message still stung when it appeared on my screen. Hey, Daniel told me what happened. I know you're upset, but don't you think you're being a little harsh? Harsh. I stared at that word for a long time, because it's amazing how quickly people will call a woman harsh, when all she's really doing is refusing to be cornered. I replied carefully. He told his parents we were engaged without ever discussing marriage with me. Then he expected me to make it real. I didn't embarrass him. I corrected a lie. Claire didn't answer for almost an hour. Then, okay, but could you maybe have handled it more privately? He's humiliated. I read that and felt something in me go still. Not hot, not frantic, just still, because there it was again. Not concerned that I had been manipulated, concerned that he had been embarrassed. He was willing to publicly invent our future, I replied. But I'm supposed to protect his pride while he takes away my choice? No response after that, just silence. Then came another message, then another. A couple from shared friends, one from an old college buddy of his I barely knew. A woman from our social circle who used to comment heart emojis under our photos like she had personally sponsored the relationship. Most of them followed the same pattern. She made one mistake. He loves you. Everyone deserves a second chance. You really ended everything over this? At first, I answered. I explained. Repeated the facts over and over until they started sounding unreal even to me. No, we had never discussed engagement. No, there was no ring. No, this was not a misunderstanding. Yes, he literally told me I had to propose for real after he told his parents. Some people changed their tone after that. A few apologized. One even admitted, that's actually way worse than he made it sound. But others doubled down. One message in particular made my stomach turn. Honestly, Alyssa, marriage is about compromise. Maybe this could have been your chance to show him you were serious. Sometimes men need reassurance. I had to read it twice to fully absorb how absurd it was. Men need reassurance. As if Daniel were the vulnerable one here. As if lying to his parents and trying to trap me into a proposal was some wounded, romantic gesture I should have interpreted more generously. I didn't respond. Because you cannot explain autonomy to people who believe keeping the peace is more important than consent. Then his extended family found me, which to this day still feels insane. A woman I'd met exactly once at a backyard barbecue, his aunt, I think, sent me a long message on social media. It was the kind of message people write when they've convinced themselves they're righteous. Paragraph after paragraph about how I had destroyed Daniel's mental health, how I had shamed him in front of the family, how I had acted cruelly and impulsively and without grace. Grace. That word almost made me laugh. There was even a line that said, "A woman with real love in her heart would have protected her man, not exposed him." I blocked her before I finished the last paragraph. Not out of fear, out of disgust. Because the story they were telling themselves was becoming clearer by the day. In their version, Daniel was not a manipulative boyfriend who lied to force a proposal. He was a lovesick man who made a small mistake. And I was the cold woman who punished him for loving too much. It would have been pathetic if it hadn't been so effective. By the middle of that week, I was exhausted. Not dramatic exhausted, not movie scene exhausted, just the real kind. The kind where your shoulders hurt for no reason. The kind where every notification makes your chest tighten. The kind where even when your phone is face down, you still feel like it's watching you. I started sleeping with it on silent. Started checking my locks twice before bed. Started replaying every moment of our relationship with a kind of brutal curiosity. Looking for the cracks. The signs. The things I had mistaken for affection when maybe they had been control all along. I remembered how he used to joke that I needed a little push whenever I hesitated about something. How he framed his persistence as confidence. How often he treated my pauses like problems to solve. At the time, it had seemed small, almost flattering. Now it looked different. Now it looked like a preview. And then it stopped being social. It became professional. That was the moment everything changed. I work as a project coordinator for a construction company. Nothing glamorous, just steady work, deadlines, spreadsheets, phone calls, site schedules, material tracking. The kind of job that doesn't make for interesting dinner conversation but pays the bills and rewards people who are organized. I like it. I'm good at it. And I have spent years building a reputation for being dependable. So when my supervisor stopped by my desk that Friday afternoon and asked if I had a minute, I didn't think much of it until I saw his face. He closed the office door behind me. Not dramatically, just quietly, too quietly. Then he leaned back against his desk and said, "I got a strange call this morning." Something in my stomach tightened. What kind of call? He hesitated. Someone claiming to be a concerned friend. My throat went dry. And? He exhaled slowly. They wanted to know whether we were aware of your history of emotional abuse. I think for a second I actually forgot how to breathe. Because there are moments when your body recognizes danger before your mind fully catches up. That was one of them. "What?" I said. It came out sharp, barely a whisper. He raised a hand gently. I didn't believe it. I know, he said quickly. "I'm not accusing you of anything. I just wanted you to know, in case this gets messier." Messier. My hands were cold. My face felt hot. And somewhere beneath the shock, beneath the humiliation, beneath the disbelief, was rage. Because harassing me online was one thing. Dragging my job into it, trying to stain the one part of my life that had nothing to do with him, that was different. That was deliberate. I swallowed hard. Did they leave a name? He shook his head. No. Block number. I nodded, even though my body felt like it belonged to someone else. "I appreciate you telling me." "Are you okay?" he asked. No. But I said yes, because sometimes dignity is just choosing which lie you can live with for the next 5 minutes. I made it through the rest of the workday somehow. Answered emails. Updated timelines. Sat through a vendor call without hearing a word anyone said. Then I went home, closed my front door, and finally let myself unravel. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Just slowly. I stood in my kitchen with my purse still over my shoulder and felt the weight of it all settle in. The relationship was over. But Daniel, or someone close to him, still wanted control. Still wanted consequence. Still wanted me punished. And suddenly, this wasn't just about being hurt anymore. This was about being targeted. That night, I texted him for the first time since he left my apartment. "Did you call my workplace and accuse me of emotional abuse?" He answered almost immediately. "What? No." I stared at the screen. Someone called my supervisor pretending to be a concerned friend. 3 dots. Then, that wasn't me. Then who was it? A longer pause this time. Then, maybe someone who actually cares about what you did to me. I read that line once, then again, and felt my jaw lock. So you're admitting someone in your circle is trying to damage my job? You're being paranoid, Alyssa. That sentence. That exact sentence. It carried the same oily tone I had started noticing near the end of our relationship, the one that made everything feel slippery, like reality itself was up for negotiation. Paranoid. Not angry because someone had targeted my work. Not concerned. Not confused. Just dismissive. As if this too were somehow my fault. Stay away from me, I typed, and tell your family to do the same. He didn't answer. The next day I got a text from an unknown number. Just one sentence. You messed with the wrong family. This isn't over. I didn't respond. I screenshotted it. Saved it. And for the first time since this whole nightmare started, I stopped hoping it would calm down on its own. Because hope is only useful when the other side still has limits. And I was beginning to understand that Daniel's family did not. So I did what I should have done from the start. I documented everything. Every text from Daniel. Every call. Every social media message. Every message from a friend parroting his version of events. The threat from the unknown number. The details from my supervisor about the workplace call. I made a folder on my laptop. Labeled it with the date. Organized everything by category. Screenshots, notes, names, timestamps. It felt cold at first. Clinical. Almost detached. But once I started, something inside me shifted. Because documenting is its own form of resistance. It says, you do not get to blur this later. You do not get to say, it didn't happen this way. You do not get to rewrite me. Then I made one more decision. A strange one, but it turned out to matter. I reached out to Daniel's sister's fiancé, Mark. We'd only met a few times, mostly at family dinners and one engagement party, where he'd seemed almost suspiciously normal, quiet, polite, the kind of man who watched before he spoke. I didn't message him to create drama. I messaged him because by that point, I was starting to realize the entire family had been fed a fake version of me. And I wanted at least one sane person on the inside to know the truth. So I kept it brief. I explained what happened. No embellishment, no emotional language, just the facts. Daniel told his parents we were engaged without talking to me. I corrected the lie. Since then, people connected to him have been contacting me, and now someone has called my workplace with false accusations. I'm not asking you to get involved. I just wanted someone close to the situation to know what actually happened. He answered in less than an hour. I had no idea it was like this. I sat down on my couch and stared at the message. Then another came through. That's not what we were told at all. We heard you two got engaged. Then you panicked and humiliated him in front of his family. My mouth went dry. Of course that was the version, he went on. No one mentioned he made it up. I typed back with steady fingers. He told me to propose for real after he already told them. There was a long pause. Then, that's really messed up. I actually closed my eyes when I read that. Not because it fixed anything, but because after days of being treated like I was the unreasonable one, seeing someone call it what it was felt like oxygen. Thank you for believing me, I wrote. I'm going to talk to Emma, he replied. Emma, Daniel's sister, the newly engaged one, the one who had texted me about love and second chances. I didn't answer after that, because there was nothing left to say. And because for the first time in days, I felt something I hadn't felt in a while. Not peace, not relief, but movement. Like the story was finally cracking open somewhere beyond me. Like the truth had slipped under a locked door. 2 days later, Mark messaged again. And this time, everything changed. Mark's message came through just after 9 p.m. I remember the exact time because I had been staring at my phone, half expecting something, half dreading it. When his name appeared, my stomach tightened. Then I opened it. I talked to Emma. I sat up straighter. Another message followed. She didn't know the real story. None of us did. A slow breath left my chest. Not relief. Something quieter than that. Validation. She thought he proposed and you backed out, he continued. When I told her what actually happened, she was furious. Not at you. I leaned back against the couch, closing my eyes for a moment, because that was the first crack. The first shift in a narrative that had been working so hard to erase me. They had a huge fight, Mark added, about the lying, about letting everyone blame you. I hesitated before replying. I didn't mean to cause problems in your family. The answer came almost immediately. You didn't cause anything. He did. I read that twice, then a third time. Because sometimes you need to hear the truth in someone else's voice before you trust your own. But it wasn't over. Because Mark had one more thing to say. And this part? This was the piece that made everything else fall into place. There's something else you should know. My chest tightened again. The call to your workplace. I held my breath. It wasn't Daniel. A pause. Then, it was his mom. For a second, I just stared at the screen, because that somehow made it worse. Not better. Not more understandable. Worse. Because Daniel's manipulation had been personal. But this was coordinated. Calculated. A grown woman deciding to interfere in my livelihood, not because she didn't know the truth, but because she had chosen a side. She's been pushing everything, Mark continued. The messages, the family reaching out, even the idea that someone should warn your employer. I let out a slow breath. It felt heavy, like something settling into place. Because now the chaos had a shape. It wasn't random. It wasn't just emotions spiraling out of control. It was a system, a family closing ranks, protecting their version of reality at any cost. I typed back slowly. Thank you for telling me. Then I set my phone down. And for the first time since this started, I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt focused. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to wait for this to escalate further. I wasn't going to keep absorbing it. I wasn't going to hope they would stop. Because people who believe they're justified rarely stop on their own. I took a day off work, sat at my kitchen table with my laptop, opened the folder I had been building. Every message, every screenshot, every timestamp. And I organized it. Properly. Not emotionally. Not reactively. Like evidence. Because that's what it was now. Then I called a lawyer. It wasn't dramatic. No courtroom. No immediate action. Just a 1-hour consultation that cost me $200 and forced me to say everything out loud to someone who had no emotional stake in it. Which, strangely, made it easier. He listened, took notes, asked precise questions. Then he leaned back in his chair and said, "The call to your workplace, that's the most serious issue." I nodded. He continued. That could qualify as intentional interference, someone knowingly making false claims to harm your employment. Hearing it framed like that, not as drama, not as conflict, but as something concrete, something actionable. It shifted something in me. What about the messages? I asked. He shrugged slightly. Unpleasant, but not illegal. And the threat? Hard to prove who sent it. Without that, it's limited. I exhaled. So what do I do? He didn't hesitate. Draw a line. A cease and desist letter. That was his recommendation. Clear, formal, unambiguous. A statement that what they were doing had consequences, and that I was no longer going to tolerate it. I had him draft it. It cost me another $350, worth every cent. The letters went out the next day, certified mail, to Daniel, to his mother, to his father. It outlined everything, the fabricated engagement, the harassment, the call to my workplace. It demanded that all contact stop immediately, and it made one thing very clear. If it didn't, I would escalate, legally. I didn't have to wait long for the impact. Not because they contacted me, but because Mark did. "You set off a bomb over here," he wrote. I almost smiled. Almost. "His dad is furious," he continued. "He had no idea his wife called your workplace." That part didn't surprise me. Not really. Because people like Daniel don't exist in isolation. They're shaped, enabled. Sometimes by people who don't even realize how far things have gone. There was a huge fight, Mark added. He said calling someone's job crossed a line. I read that slowly. Because it mattered. Not for revenge, but for truth. For accountability. Even if it was happening in a house I would never step into again. His mom tried to defend it, Mark went on. Said she was protecting her son. Of course she did. Because in her mind, she was. And Daniel? I typed. There was a pause before the reply. Longer than usual. Then, he's blaming everyone but himself. I let out a quiet breath. Because that was the least surprising part of all. He says his parents made things worse. That his sister betrayed him. That you overreacted. Of course, because accountability requires self-awareness. And that was something Daniel had never shown me. But here's the part that mattered. The part that changed everything. The messages stopped. Completely. No more texts from extended family. No more moral lectures from strangers. No more concerned friends. No more attempts to reach me. No more interference with my job. Nothing. Silence. Real silence. 3 days after the letters were delivered, I got one final message. Not from Daniel. From his mother. It came through Facebook. Short. Simple. I apologize for calling your workplace. It was wrong. I let my emotions get the better of me. I won't contact you again. I stared at it for a long time. Because in a strange way, that message said everything. Not just about her, but about him. She apologized. Not perfectly. Not completely. but she recognized the line she had crossed. Daniel never did. Not once. Not privately. Not publicly. Not even when everything collapsed around him. According to Mark, Daniel had already moved on. Some woman from his gym. New conversations, new routines, new version of himself. I wondered, briefly, if she knew what he was capable of. Then I stopped, because it wasn't my responsibility to warn the next person. Just like it hadn't been my responsibility to fix him. As for me, I'm okay. Better than okay. Nassum. It wasn't easy. There were nights where I replayed everything, where I questioned myself, where I wondered if I had been too harsh, too quick, too unwilling to compromise. But every time that thought crept in, I went back to the message. Now you have to propose for real. And I remembered exactly why I walked away.
Us.
Because love doesn't corner you. It doesn't decide your future for you. It doesn't lie to the world and expect you to follow along. Some people ask me if I regretted it, if maybe I should have just gone along with it. Proposed. Seen where it led. No, absolutely not. Because a marriage that begins with pressure doesn't end with peace. It ends with control, resentment, and a lifetime of wondering when the next push becomes a trap. I didn't lose a future. I avoided one. I still have the dress I bought for a wedding that was never mine. I'm keeping it. Not because I'm waiting for something to replace what I lost, but because I earned it. Because it's mine. Because not everything tied to a broken story needs to be thrown away. Next month, I'm going to my cousin's wedding. I'll wear something new. Stand in a room full of people who chose each other freely. And I'll mean it when I smile. Because now, I know exactly what I won't accept. And that knowledge, that clarity, that's not loss. That's freedom.